Hey JP.
Hey John, how are you?
Yeah, doing great. How are you?
I'm so thankful for extra daylight, so doing well.
Yes, absolutely. Well, today we're talking admissions, right?
Yeah,
Admissions timeline. Is it too late to apply? What's the ideal admissions timeline for most people? And retaking the LSAT, not retaking the LSAT in consideration of that timeline. So let's get into it.
yeah, let's do it.
All right.
Um,
So why don't you lay out the general admissions timeline for people just so they have like a frame of reference for what we're talking about?
yeah, so applications go live late August, early September. You have early decision, uh, usually around. I mean, it varies, but I would say like November is like within that time range is pretty usual.
Yeah,
Um,
one thing just to note that all schools are different. So like
yeah,
your cycle is a little bit, I would say compressed if you're like in like the T14 type of
yeah,
range. If you're looking at like maybe top 50, top 100, that cycle expands a little bit into the spring, into the summer. So, you know, when we're talking like, well, it's kind of around here, kind of around there, we're giving you the best approximation we can because
yeah.
every school's different.
I think that's a great thing to mention before we start because I think it's definitely not a one size fits all. It's some schools will have I'm thinking like UPenn, for example, there's like like batches of like
Yeah.
there's like ED1 deadline, ED2, etc. So a lot of it is very uh specific to the schools, but
And like scholarship priority deadlines and things like
yes,
that as well. So like there's a lot of little micro deadlines within the broader
yeah,
context of like, oh, applications aren't due till February 15th.
yeah,
Well, sort of, kind of.
and, and there's also FAFSA.
Yeah.
That being said, there's just a lot of moving parts. So I think definitely um, it's good to think about these things before the cycle starts so you can get all these things together.
Yeah.
You know,
And as we talk, I
yeah,
guess, a little bit about ideal timeline,
yeah,
the ideal that I think we're going to discuss is going to be ideal for anybody. Right? If you have everything
yeah,
done by Halloween, that's pretty ideal no matter, regardless
yeah,
of what kind of school that you're looking at.
yeah,
You'll be in position for the ED1 deadlines and for the scholarship priority deadlines, and certainly before any of the actual deadlines occur. So that gives you the broadest range of schools to apply to. And I think it's wise to target that if you have the time for it. Now, right now, it's March 18th. So we are a little bit later in the cycle for this current cycle. So we'll talk a little bit about what people can do right now if they do plan on trying to apply this cycle and get in for the fall.
yeah. And I think another thing to preface this conversation is um, it's really important to be mindful of uh, how rolling admissions work, right?
Right.
So the class will get filled up prior to the application deadline, all these things. So it is very to one's benefit to apply earlier in the cycle, in that there's more scholarship money available. There's
Yep.
there's more wiggle room. You're putting yourself in a good spot. So
Yep.
definitely, like John said, um, October, November, that's great. But you're gonna be in different buckets, um, depending on where your score is, what your plans are for the upcoming year, etc. But
Yeah.
also in putting together an application, I feel like reading forums or just talking to people, I know sometimes the um, decision to go to law school is very late, and then there's the juggling of LSAT, and then there's also applications, and
Yeah.
I need to check in with this recommender. So that's why it's really important to know, okay, like things open in September, like here are some deadlines. Going to vary by school, but I'll make a list of schools I'm interested in. Be mindful of like scholarship deadlines. Just kind of having a holistic overview, I think, makes the process a little bit less stressful, so you can put your best foot forward.
Yep. And if you can have everything done, your LSAT's done, you've got the best score you can possibly get, your letters of recommendation are in, your
Letters are,
personal everything's ready by October 1st. You're like you're on top of your game. Like that is
Yeah.
perfection. Now, most people aren't going to hit that, right? So, and most people there's going to be varying circumstances that we have to look at. But I think you mentioned before, a lot of schools do batches, right? So they're going to look at, here's this batch, we'll make our acceptances out of this batch and then this batch. And as they do, the class fills up, right? And then we're just in our basic law of supply and demand. So supply is starting to shrink. And that means in this case, it's not price that goes up, it's standards that go up. So they want higher LSAT scores, they want higher GPAs, they want more extracurriculars as you get to that scarcity because they have fewer and fewer seats to fill, and they still have, thousands of applicants that are looking for these spots. So get in early while the class is completely open. Their coffers are full of money to give away for scholarships. That's your ideal time. Now, if you can't make that, that doesn't mean don't do it, right? It just means that there's going to be other considerations, and you just want to be strategic.
Yeah. I think another thing to consider is sometimes things can go wrong along the way, right? Say something with like, I read things like, something with formatting of my letter of rec, or, this file wasn't sent. So, by doing things early, you can just save yourself some pressure, so definitely, advantageous for yourself, but also in how you are in the cycle, right? And if you show up earlier, it's, I think it's probably a little easier to stand out, right? By the end of it, like you said, the standards have gone higher. There's been, it's kind of crazy. Sometimes you see, I think I was looking at last year, it was like come November, December, and it's like 10K, 15K applications already in. So, it's, just being mindful of it. It's like, this is how the landscape looks like.
Yep. Yeah. And just think of it like this. If you were applying for a job, right, would you want to get there 15 minutes early, look professional, be put together, have your everything's like really well dialed in, perfect, you're ready to go? Or do you want to come bursting through the doors last minute, right before the interview starts? And, it just, I would be much more likely to hire somebody who was like, oh, this person was very prepared, this person was very diligent, they knew to be here early, because that's one of the things too, that's also a part of, what makes a good attorney is being able to have some foresight, right? And having foresight in the application cycle is in itself like a benefit to just looking at that applicant. It's like, oh, this applicant had a lot of foresight. So I can imagine that admissions committees would favor those people a little bit more, just naturally.
Yeah. And I like how you also parallel it to other domains, right? It's interesting that you say that. I was listening to a podcast, like HR professionals and like different spaces in tech talking about, actually, if that job posting goes up, if you're within the first, if you're applying kind of like quite like fast, then there's the hiring managers were saying, oh, it's they're very excited to read, everything's very fresh, and
right.
Say if you apply, it's been there for 2 weeks, and they've already looked at thousands of applicants, and they're a little tired. So and you're saying that it's like, oh, this applies to other domains too. And it's something that we talk about with the LSAT too, right? Where this is one step of like a longer journey. So just like how, once, you're on the other side, you want to put your best foot forward.
Yep.
In these preparatory steps, there's a lot of things you can do to also put your best foot forward.
Yeah, and honestly, when I interview candidates, if the candidate is 1 minute, I have had this policy since Odyssey started, and some people may think it's a little too strict or maybe a little bit crazy. But if the candidate's 1 minute late, then the interview's not happening. They're not hired. That opportunity is gone. Because if you can't manage your own schedule, there's no way that you're going to be able to, in my opinion, you're not going to consistently be able to meet with students on time, and there's going to be issues, and people's studying is going to get broken up because you haven't mastered the skill of time management yet. Now it is a skill, so it is something that you'll be able to work on. But there are people with similar mentalities as me, and if it's 1 minute late, then it's 1 minute late. When I call somebody who, if I have an appointment with them, I call them 1 minute early. Every time I try to do it 1 minute early, so that the clock never even hits. Like if the call's at noon, that the clock doesn't even hit noon, so that they're not thinking, oh, are they calling? Are they not? I'm there, a minute early. Then we're on the call, just because it does show a level of professionalism, and it does putting your best foot forward. And especially when you're in law school applications, there are thousands of people vying for the few hundred seats at particular law schools, and it's competitive.
Yeah.
It definitely is.
One thing that came to mind, and I guess this is, also related to this topic, is that in differentiating oneself, again, just having that holistic process, you can, contact schools. There's often a lot of events like symposiums, like in-person events or webinars.
Yeah.
You can get lots of times if you're, you get on a listserv or you're on the candidate referral services, you'll get emails like, oh, ask me anything with current students, or, answering some like questions on financial aid. And those are great opportunities to, talk to people who are, looking at applications, or talk to people in these places. So, I think by planning and starting things a little earlier, you can think, what schools am I looking at? What regions am I looking at? Like you give yourself time for these scheduling things, rather than, there's apps. Did that recommender get back to me? Oh,
yeah.
Oh, I missed this FAFSA deadline. It's just everything's kind of on fire. So
yeah, and a lot of people do think like, all right, I'm going to spend 3 to 5 months on the LSAT, then after that it's a breeze. Well, it turns out once you turn that corner, applications, that's a difficult process too. It's a lot of juggling, a lot of management. You're managing other people now too, your recommenders, making sure that those are getting in and getting done well, and your personal statements, optional essays, and all of this stuff. And then trying to build this holistic picture of what your application and what you as an applicant will look like.
And I like how you mentioned optional essays too, because that's another thing in what we're talking about now. A lot of it is, differentiating oneself, putting your best foot forward. With these optional essays, I guess we can take the job analogy again, right? Say you're looking at your dream job, or, something where this is it. This is something you really want. If you have extra opportunities to showcase, your personality or something about yourself, then it's probably in your best interest to do so, to differentiate yourself from others. So again, there's just a lot of moving parts.
Yeah.
I would say, what are things that you've talked about with people when they're looking at, say, oh, John, I think I can raise my score. It's not, I really want to take January, or, what are some conversations you've had like that?
Yeah, and it does depend on where in the cycle you are, right? So I always use kind of winter break as a very easy differentiator between the first half of the cycle and the second half of the cycle.
Yeah.
So if you take the October test and you're 5 points off where your average was on your PTs rolling in, I would take the November test as well.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a huge advantage to applying directly after November versus directly after, or October versus November. There probably is a slight advantage, but it's not worth 5 LSAT points. It's probably worth not even 1 LSAT point, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So in that instance, it makes a ton of sense. Now, if it's November, usually there's not a December test. So, there's this chasm between the November test and the January test.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of times maybe a large portion of the class is filled. Maybe not most of it, sometimes depending on the schools, but a large proportion, many of those seats are now taken because they've gone through at least 1, maybe 2 rounds of decisions. So that math becomes a little bit harder. And if you have the scores that are competitive to get you in and to get you the scholarships that you're looking for, you probably should apply. Even if you think you can do a little bit better, and perhaps maybe if you don't get the offers you want, you retake and then resubmit that, and you can get some separate consideration. But that big break between November and January should be handled with care. Now, I've had students who I remember this one student scored like a 168 in November, and that was kind of within the range of where he was scoring,
Yeah.
maybe a point or two low. And he
Yeah.
decided he wanted to go for January. He ended up getting a 174 in January. He applied. He's in, I think he might have gone to Harvard or something. He went to
Yeah.
like or Columbia or something like. It's just like
Yeah.
a really great law school, and he had applied after that January test, and he was totally fine. So don't let this be like you can't do these things. But in an ideal world, you don't get yourself into the position where you need to make that decision. So the people who are studying now, it's March. Like I'm having them target the August LSAT. If
Yeah.
that doesn't work out, they've
Exactly.
got September. If that doesn't work out, they've got October. If that doesn't work out, they've got November, and they're
Yeah.
still on this side of the year. Ideally, they're going to get it done in the first one or two tries. That's typically how it is with our students, and then they'll be able to apply and be very early in the cycle.
Yeah, I think there were a lot of gems that you just shared with us, John. And just to reiterate some,
Yeah.
it is very important to note that there is that the big gap between November and January. And I think that mind or viewing the cycle as in this is the first half and this is the latter half is a good way to look at it, because say come January, you still have to wait for your score to come out, right? So
Right.
say it comes out like three weeks later, right? So, getting apps in late January, early February, it's like kind of towards the tail end of the cycle. So, aiming things for say October and November, I think is a good battle plan for trying to get things in by then.
Yeah.
That also comes, yeah,
Especially for T14s, that feels like towards
yeah,
the tail end. Now, if
yeah,
there's other schools that their application deadlines aren't until like June, and like for
yeah,
them, that feels very much mid-cycle and very
yeah,
much okay, right? So
yeah,
just a little nuance there.
yeah. Also want to say that I really liked how you said, um, I think maybe it's just for those who apply to law school, they tend to, be very analytical and, try to optimize, very like hardworking bunch. Um,
Yep.
I would caution against like analysis paralysis, right? Where you have all these statistics and, you're looking, is this a slow cycle, fast cycle? And, you're trying to
Doesn't matter.
account for everything.
Yeah.
But the story that you shared with, you know, hey, 168, put in the effort, like I have the time, like this is something I'd want to do. And then it turned out well. So it's not
Yeah.
like all these things are set in stone. These are things to be mindful of. But, um, you know, there's lots of different ways of going on about this. It's just important to be aware so you can empower yourself and, say you're in a suboptimal situation, but, you've, played around with the variables that are important for you, then, that's fine. And you also read about people, I'm going to apply next year. So, everyone has different things going on.
Yeah.
So definitely not everything is concrete, right? Just make the decision that's best for yourself.
Yeah, and as a general guiding principle, you should try to if you're going to law school and that's where you're going, you should try to get there as quickly as you can.
Yeah.
So if you find yourself late in the decision cycle, you just happen to make that decision at a point in time that doesn't happen to match up with the admissions cycle.
Yeah.
You need to kind of look at these things and decide how you're going to get it done. But every year there's a ton of great people in January who take that test and get into
Oh, for sure.
T14s and crush and get big scholarships and all of that stuff. For sure happens. And back to the analogy of like, the job applicants and the person getting fatigued. If they see an applicant that's a rock star, they're going to wake up and still be like, oh, well, this is really good. Oh yeah, this person's awesome. We really want to get them in for an interview, even if they're, the 300th applicant that they've read, or they come in just a minute before things are starting. And if you're a rock star and you've got the numbers and everything works, they're more than happy to take you.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, you took care of your personal statements, you got everything in, then it's January, just, get your things in. And I think there is kind of, I feel like a lot of times in looking at forums or, you just hear what people think, it's, like do or die, or like, oh, if I don't get this, then it's over for me. But there are a lot of like good anecdotes and success stories, and I know for my study buddies, they found themselves in a similar situation, like the person you mentioned with November, January, also landed their dream schools. Everything's fine.
Oh
So,
yeah.
yeah, there's things aren't set in stone.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah. You
I
just be on top of it as much as you can.
I also like what you said. It also depends on where people want to go, right?
Yeah.
Because depending on like certain schools, the timeline there's a little bit more flexibility, right? Where
Yeah.
If some schools are still like hosting like financial aid sessions and it's like February, or there's still a lot of like resources, and they're still quite competitive schools. So it all depends on how your list is and what your priorities are. And I think if there's anything to get from this, I think it's start to consider, all the different places you want to go to, gather the information, reach out to people, and yeah, should well, should you apply later, try and see what the results are. Yeah, go from there.
Yeah, and I know a lot of students sometimes will, like, if they're very late in the cycle and they're like, all right, like I know I can improve this LSAT score. I know I can do more, but I do want to get started as soon as possible. They'll send maybe like a few applications out to some schools that they're
Test the water,
considering, and test the waters a little bit.
Yeah.
And see if they get something, back that they're super happy with. Boom, they're off to law school. If not, then they're regrouping, and then they're, like applying to maybe a broader set the next year, but they're planning on being very early in the cycle.
Yeah, that's something I've seen too. I think that's a good point, right? Where it's like, say, maybe like recognizing like, oh, it is a little bit later for the places I want to go to. In that case, let me do a smaller batch. And then these are the batches that, if I get it, then full send, right?
Yeah.
So adjust accordingly.
Yep. And I've definitely seen students, like getting it. I mean, I had a student get in off the wait list in August one time.
Yeah, sometimes they are a little late with that.
And they're like, "Oh, I'm going to law school in 3 days." It's like, "Oh wow, congratulations, that's fantastic." And the whole wait list game. It seems more and more and more people are getting put on wait lists like that. These wait lists are massive. Through the admissions cycles. So, you can't really count your chickens if you're on one of those wait lists and hoping that something's going to happen. If you're waitlisted and you don't have an acceptance in hand that you're happy with going with, I would be at that point regrouping for next year. If it works out, it works out. But better to start and just get yourself ready to be ahead of the game next year, which something's going to have to change in your application next year. It can't just be earlier in the cycle. That's not enough to do it typically. You need to add some points to that LSAT score. That's the only thing you can really do. And you can change up the personal statement and do a little bit better things there, but they want to see something substantial move. And the LSAT score is the thing that you have, and it's going to take months.
Yeah, that's a good point on the wait list too. I feel like it almost feels like there's been a lot more people just waiting on the wait list, and you don't know when, how the dynamics of that will play out, right? Because it'll cause like a tumble where the seat opens, and August is quite bad, but you do have people getting like May or something. It's like, I guess I'm in, but rather than waiting, there are some things you can do to be proactive, right? And should you get in and it works, then at least you took the steps to put yourself in a good position and be mindful. Like, all right, like in this fork of the road, what are my options?
Yeah, and you definitely don't want to be late in on the wait list into like midsummer or something, or even early summer, and then not doing anything, and then you're not in, and now you have to regroup, and all of a sudden you're like, oh well, the applications are coming out in 2 months, and then now you're late in the cycle again because don't keep perpetuating that cycle. Be on top of it, make some adjustments. And I know nobody wants to study for the LSAT more than they have to, and nobody wants to spend the extra resources, the time, the money, any of that stuff. But
subscription.
yeah, if you look at it as though like, all right, well, I'm just improving my logical reasoning skills, and having those better skills will serve me better in law school and beyond, then even if you get in and you don't have to take the LSAT again, I mean, that's a win. You'll be super happy if that happens. And you improve your skills along the way, and that's going to serve you well later in life too.
Yeah. One thing I want to ask you, John, is, I feel like come this time every year, there's, always people sharing their stories and, like, should I wait? Should I take it? What are some, do you have any other anecdotes or things that come to mind for, people you've talked to or things that you've seen that helped with that decision-making process?
Yeah. So mid-March, because the next test, you've got the April test and you've got the June test. There's also this, because this year there's a lot of times not a March test. So like from February, you get that gap until April, and then April just feels like you're really pushing late in the cycle. So like you do have, like, if you've got it done in February, you've got some options, there, depending on what kinds of schools you're looking at, you should be okay to apply. The April test is pushing late, but it's okay. You can get under the gun for some of them. If you're not going to be ready till June, I would just go ahead and flip the switch and just be like, all right, I'm just moving towards next cycle. All right. So I'm going to take it maybe in June, but maybe give myself a couple extra months. I'll do August, and then I'll be ready to have my applications in first thing in October. Not get the test out in August, get the applications ready, and then I'll be in first thing, and I'll have a really great score. I'll have had some extra time. Because one thing that happens sometimes is people plan on applying this cycle, and they're like, I'll take the February test, and then February there doesn't work out for whatever reason. And then they're like, okay, well then I'm going to take the April test. And then they do this like 2-month shotgun thing where they're not really trying to dive deep on the material. They're just trying to scrap points. This is like the final scuffle to get more points. And then, if April doesn't work, then June's a month behind, and now they're scrapping to do that. And they never just like, all right, let me just take 3 months and put together what the proper plan should be, instead of always being in this like fight or flight kind of mode of like, I got to get this done on the next one. I got to get this done on the next one. But you're never putting together like this holistic, large, big picture plan of what your study process should look like.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point where recognizing like you definitely don't want to be in a scramble and head first, like you're rolling around, right? You want to sit down, study thoroughly, give it your best shot, and have that peace of mind, like, I know what the options are before me, and like I'll take it as I go, because some people sometimes try to force themselves into, right, like, like I have to do this, and it's like, well, if we're April, June, you wait a couple months and you're, in the first batch, you're right there, September, October. So definitely think that's good advice. And I think one thing that really helps is taking that step back and maybe doing some research, right? Or research as in, like these are like regions that I'm considering, or like these are like webinars, or like I'm reaching out and informing myself in like outside this LSAT bubble. So the LSAT bubble has some meaning, and I think it provides some calm, and you're automatically applying or engaging with the timeline a little bit more effectively, rather than that scrambling process that you talked about, right?
And I would also say, if you have specific questions, like, is it too late to apply to Georgia State? There's a couple things you can do. Call the admissions committee, right? That they're going to give you the best advice possible. They'll let you know what you need to do, when the deadlines are, and what, you can even talk to them. Hey, I've got this LSAT score. I was thinking about retaking. They may even give you a little bit of advice. They're like, yeah, you probably should, or you can give us a call, or someone similar who has an admissions consulting team. And you can work with like an actual admissions consultant on your specific case, on the schools that you're targeting, on what your LSAT score is, where you are in the cycle, and get a really personalized recommendation that way. So those are a couple of things.
I think the personalization of that is huge, right? Where if you're talking to people who have seen so many different instances and can provide insight into your particular circumstance and what's important for you, And I think the power in contacting the schools is something that I'm not sure if that's utilized as much, but a school's happy, right? And then they remember you, and then you show interest.
Right.
And I think, like you said, I think people would be surprised, the insight that they can get in talking to the people at the schools that they're interested in and helping inform that decision, right?
Yep.
So definitely excellent advice.
For sure. All right. Well, wherever you are in the application cycle, we wish you the best of luck. Hopefully everybody gets in, you get the scholarships that you need. JP, as always, great chatting with you.
Yeah, likewise. Bye, everyone.
Bye, guys.